Hello there. It is December 2. Um, it's already 11:10 here in the Philippines. Can you feel the cold winds of December? Here where I am, we can absolutely feel the December air. And I hope you are doing fine wherever you are in the world. This is a live stream. However, this will be saved and uploaded later, and I hope you catch this and uh, I hope you will still comment, react, etc. Now, let's talk about the general steps in building a Bikol blade. And while we're talking about it, let's also mention the various roles, you know, the various roles uh, that are being played just to produce a Bicol blade or a blade in general. By the way, I'm Jason Chancoco. I'm your host for this small YouTube channel, Hagbayon Channel. I am entrepreneur, college professor, instructor. I am also a writer, rock guitarist, martial arts practitioner, enthusiast, a blades researcher, blades architect. Uh, I'm also an outdoorsman, prepper, survivalist in philosophy and in practice. So, what are the steps in building a Bicol blade? By the way, the Bicol region is in the Philippines, southern Luzon. By the way, the Philippines is in Southeast Asia. Uh, in the Bicol region is in southern Luzon. The Philippines is composed of three major islands: the Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao Islands. And the Bicol region is composed of the uh, provinces of Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, Sorsogon. There's also Masbate. Okay, there's also Catanduanes, and going south we have the Visayas. What are now the steps and the rules? No? The steps, general steps in building a Bicol blade, and the roles being played just to build a Bicol blade. Of course, number one, there's the designing stage, the architecture stage, or the researching stage. Uh, uh, Particularly if the blade is a postmodern build, usually there is a designer or an architect. The designer slash architect may even have a patent, may even apply for a patent for the design of the blade. And if in case he is not a blacksmith or an artisan, he could actually contract with a blacksmith or artisan, and that blacksmith or artisan will now uh, work on the blade and make it a reality. However, the design or the patent could very well be still owned by the designer. There could be a contract for that effect, and the contract will of course be strictly adhered to by the parties. For instance, the contract is that the designer will ask this particular will let this particular blacksmith slash artisan to work on the blade, uh, for example 10 blades and only 10 blades. So that's their contract, and that the production of the blade will be for a consideration. And the blacksmith cannot produce more, more of that design and then actually sell it, because that would be breach of contract and a breach of the patent, the right to the patent of the blades designer or blades architect. You see, in blades we have categories. For example, we have blades that are native. For example, the Zanzibar is a blade that is native to Leyte in the Visayas, or the Minasbad is a blade that is native to the Bicol region, particularly Camarines Sur. Um, Although there are claims that it actually originated from Masbate, however, it is quite cosmopolitan, widespread in Bicol. So it's a native blade. There may be traditional versions of that native blade. When we say traditional, it is when the blade is already modified by virtue of the historical upheavals that happened in that particular area or region. For instance, the Minasbad has had some modifications, the introduction of the handguard by virtue of the so-called Spanish colonization, the raiders from the south, okay, which actually prompted the Bicolanos to actually modify the Minasbad and introduce a handguard, particularly a sagang or a gardasyon, for it to be suited for battle. Alright, so that's already a traditional minasbad, no longer a native minasbad. And by the way, a native or a traditional minasbad being historical cannot be patented. You cannot apply for a patent for said blade. And we also have the modern builds, recreations, renditions. For instance, a Bicolano might want to create a katana or a Japanese sword, and of course that is a reproduction or that is a modern build. For example, a Mindanaoan might want to produce a Zanzibar. Uh, it's just a kind of a tribute to the Zanzibar. It will come out as a rendition or a kind of tribute or a blade that's a build that is influenced by the Visayans. It will be a modern build, not a native build or traditional build, because the builder is not, actually from the Visayas, for instance. Or if the blade is Minasbad and the builder is a Moro or a Tausug, so it will be a modern build, not a native build, because the Moro is not native to Bicol. Alright, so it's a modern build. Alright, so when you have a designer, for instance, or an architect of the blade, you have there the designer or the architect inventing a particular profile that's never been done before, and a particular hilt design, scabbard design that's never been done before. We have now the designer or the architect, and that is a postmodern build that can be patented. For instance, the Pam Brown Tracker, all right, the Pam Brown Tracker, which was actually invented, or designed by Tom Brown. He was once asked as to what is the best, survival knife, and he actually answered, "There is no best survival knife because I have not invented it yet." So that's what he said at one point during an interview, and true enough, later he actually invented the tracker, the tracker knife, which was later used for a movie. You know very well what movie. The movie that actually stars Benicio del Toro, the movie Haunted or The Hunted. Uh-huh. And that's actually an example of a postmodern build. So it's something that is, invented by a particular designer. It can actually be patented. So that's the first step of blade building. Also in Bicol blade building, the designing stage, the architecture stage. In cases of native blades or Philippine, traditional and native blades, there could be a researcher For instance, that particular blade is no longer being produced by that area, and then you actually end up producing it after much research, after much research, field research, books, poring over books, and going to different private collections and galleries in museums, local and abroad. And after getting enough information, you ask, for example, a Bicolano blacksmith to build minasbad after you actually did a lot of field research, museum research, collectors research, private collections, and reading books, etc., about the minasbad, and you ask the blacksmith to execute, you know, the the items or the information you got from your research. Okay, then we also have the research stage, which is also part of the first step. So the first step and the role that is being played in the first step. The first step is the designing stage or the architecture stage or the researching stage, where we have the designer, the architect, and the researchers. Okay, that's the first stage. Second step or second step or the second role. The second step is the materials gathering step. All right. The materials gathering step is usually done by the designer, architect, or researcher. But sometimes it is also done by the blacksmith or by the artisan. All right. Sometimes it's also done by the blacksmith or the artisan. For example, for a Bikol blade, you will need first to gather the proper the proper metal. Usually it's carbon steel metal. It's actually the best type because uh, it is a known fact that carbon steel metal is reliable more than the usual stainless steel metal being used for some kitchen knives. Usually, Bicolanos would look for vintage, vintage iron, particularly 5160 carbon steel. That's what is being used. Uh, Preferably 1940s or earlier, or even 1950s. Uh, Vintage, what? Vintage iron, 5160 carbon steel. And it's quite difficult to find, but it's possible to find them. This one is 5160 carbon steel. By the way, we have three types of uh, acero or carbon steel. We have the black or acerong itim. It's dark. We have the acerong puti. I think this is acerong puti or white. And there's also the acerong blandi or red. So it's quite it rusts easily. So another is that the materials gatherer would also look for materials for the hilt, usually wood, uh, guava wood, barayong wood, or uh, carabao horn. Okay, carabao horn. We also use, aside from carabao horn, we also use antler. Antler. Of course, wood, antler, carabao horn. And it's better if you can find albino carabao horn because some people prefer the albino horn because it's whitish, etc. This one is not an albino carabao horn. There also, you might want to look for a material for a handguard, usually a stainless or bronze or brass. So, for example, this one is a material for a handguard. This is bronze. It's a bronze tube. Yeah, you can actually cut this and flatten this, and this will work as a handguard as well. Of course, some bronze or some aluminum for the ferrule, scabbard blocks, etc. And some really nice wood. You can use langka, you can use madre cacao, you can use nara, you can use what? You can use um, barayong, which is a premium wood. You can also use marabical, also a premium wood. Right there. That's for materials gathering. In Japan, there's a special, a special slot for that particular role. That person who would be looking for the rocks, for the iron ore. Okay, for the iron ore, where the iron would be extracted from. In Japan, there is a particular role for that. The blacksmith doesn't have to do that. There's somebody else who will have to do that. That's part of the materials gathering in producing a Japanese sword. But here in the Philippines, particularly here in the Bikol, the materials gathering only involves, finding iron ore. Before the invention of, for example, the invention of vehicles, wherein we now have leaf spring, leaf spring or molly. The next step would be the blacksmithing step. All right, and the role there is that the role of the blacksmith. The blacksmith would now try to forge. Would now forge the 5160 carbon steel, and would now hammer it. All right, and would use the chisel to actually shape it. He would put it under extreme temperature, extremely hot temperature, using traditional methods or native methods, using charcoal, which is very rich in carbon. So another source of carbon, which is very good for carbon steel. And afterwards, the blacksmith would now try to forge the blade itself, try to shape it using hammer and anvil. He might also need to, as we said, to chisel it. All right, to chisel it. And for Bikol blades, more often than not, the tang is rat tail tang. But sometimes we also produce full tang. But most of Bikol blades native designs involve rat tail tang. Rat tail tang profile. And that's for the blacksmithing stage. Sometimes the blacksmith is also the designer, is also the architect, is also the researcher. Sometimes the blacksmith is also the materials gatherer, but sometimes not. Okay, sometimes not. Sometimes the blacksmith is just the one who pummels the iron. Okay, but also sometimes the blacksmith would also be the one who will craft the hilt or the scabbard. He would also be the one to do the carving or the labor or the inscriptions on the blade itself. But in Japan, the blacksmith is different from the materials gatherer. Okay, there's a specialization in Japan. The blacksmith is not the materials gatherer. In the blacksmith is not the artisan. In the blacksmith is not the pulidor or the polisher. So we have different roles when we talk of producing or building a Japanese sword. All right, the next step is the crafting of the hilt and of the scabbard. All right, crafting of the hilt and the scabbard, and the 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 part where uh, you tattoo, the tattooing of the blade, or the labor stage. That's when the artisan would make a labor or an inscription on the. Let me show you an example. An inscription, a particular inscription on the sword or the blade, like this one, for instance. Can you appreciate the inscription? It's difficult to see. This particular blade is so shiny, so it's reflecting the light. So there we are now in the stage where the artisan is now working on the blade. The artisan will now what will now make a scabbard. Will now make a scabbard for the blade. Um, usually, the polidor would be doing his thing first. He would be sharpening or polishing the blade. Okay, first before the artisan takes over to craft the scabbard and the hilt. Why is this? It's because you have to sharpen this and polish this already before you actually make a scabbard, so that the scabbard would actually fit the blade properly, so it won't fall off. See? Because if you delay the sharpening and polishing stage, you do the crafting of the scabbard first. All right, for example, you're done and then it fits properly as is, and afterwards you polish and sharpen the blade. More or less it will thin out the blade, and when you put it inside its scabbard again, it might not fit anymore. It might come loose and it might fall off. It might fall off when you do this. Yeah, that's it. That's why after the blacksmithing stage, particularly here in Bicol, uh, it's better to sharpen the blade first, and polish the blade first, and do the labor already. All right. So you are sure when you make the scabbard that the blade will really fit inside it firmly. So there, that's the fourth stage, from designing, architecture, researching, to materials gathering, and to blacksmithing, and to polishing and sharpening. We now go to the fifth stage, the crafting of the hilt and the scabbard. Sorry, I was able to mix it up. The crafting of the hilt and the scabbard, and inscribing of the labor, as we said, the inscribing of this one, which, by the way, is also more often than not done before the polishing. So anyway, sometimes we interchange it, or our blacksmiths interchange the process. So we now make something like this one, tinabayo. The blacksmiths would now try to carve this, or even the artisan would now try to carve this one. All right, and then make these carvings. By the way, this one is a work by a friend of mine. His name is Christian. Shout out to Christian. Christian Beatriz. All right. Um, there, those are the stages of and the roles in creating a Bikol blade. So first we have the designing or architecture or researching stage. Um, there comes the role of the designer, the architect, the blade architect, and the blades researcher. For postmodern builds, because blades that are postmodern and blades that are designed in a product of architecture, or a product of a particular designer's you know mental creation or intellectual property, you can actually patent. You can actually patent a blade when you're actually a designer of a blade. Of course, the next stage is the materials gathering. As we said, this also sometimes done by the designer and the architect or the researcher, and sometimes by the blacksmith as well. Um, Next stage is a blacksmithing stage, when you now forge the blade into shape. All right. Sometimes the designer, architect, or researcher, materials gatherer is also the. There was a glitch. All right. Next is now the polishing, sharpening slash polishing using natural whetstones, because if you use machines, you might ruin the temper line. By the way, tempering of the blade is part of blacksmithing. That's when you know make the blade bimetallic. You make it bimetallic by uh, after forging the blade in high temperature. For example, you heat it again after you're done forging. After you're done with the profile, you heat it again under extremely high temperature, and then you submerge the edge on water. That's when you temper the blade. You make the blade bimetallic, meaning to say the the part that is tempered has now a different carbon composition than the part that is not tempered. The part that is tempered, that is really very hard but brittle, but the part that is not tempered is very malleable. So it works as a caution. For example, if you temper this part, you're done forging, etc. You heat it, high temperature. It's now nagbabaga. It's all red like the color of the sun, and then you submerge it, submerge it. But you have to be very careful, because it might break. One mistake, uh, the blade could break. So some people use oil. Some people use oil because oil is not as harsh as water. So if you submerge this in the water, this particular part here, deep until here, until here, there, but not this upper part, not here, but just this, just the edge, higher or more, depends upon you. If you're using rail lock steel, the quench should be high, because rail lock is extremely brittle, hard but brittle. So unlike 5160 carbon steel, so you submerge it and it becomes bimetallic, just like the katana. And then now this edge becomes what? This edge becomes very hard, You know, the edge becomes very hard and brittle. All right, while this part is soft and malleable. This part now cautions becomes a caution for this one, or a caution. I mean caution for this one, for this part. So this will absorb the force. This part will absorb the force and the hardness of this part. That's how it is. After that, the blacksmith would now, or the polidor. Sometimes the blacksmith is also the polidor and the sharpener. So sometimes not. So the polidor would now sharpen the blade, polish the blade. The polidor would later reappear to actually polish the rivets. This one, the ferrule, all right, and the scabbard locks, or even the handguard, if applicable. If applicable. So that's it. And then comes now the artisan, as we said, the one who will be crafting the scabbard and the hilt. He will now carve the hilt and the scabbard, the wooden scabbard. Sometimes Bicolanos would use PVC there. PVC there. PVC, it's kind of a plastic also. So, but it's better if you use wood. After that, the polidor would once again come back to. Sometimes the artisan is also the blacksmith. Mm-hmm. Polidor would now, for instance, polish the ferrule, polish the scabbard locks, etc., etc., and might varnish the scabbard or apply varnish on the scabbard, or might, for example, if you're using maravical wood, the artisan might apply oil on the surface of the scabbard to make it more black. So more black. Sometimes the artisan would also submerge. For example, this, if you're not using a maravical wood, if you want to blacken it, sometimes you might want to submerge it on water, or under the soil, wet soil for a while, and then some people would even put it under the ground for more than, say, 24 hours. Some people, and then it would now come out really black and would look like a maravical, even if it's not. So there, in summary, all these steps and roles could be done by one person only, or all these steps and roles could be done by 5 persons. A, B, C, D, E. A, B, C, D. So 5 persons. Okay, you may be the architect, you may be the designer, researcher, as well as the materials gatherer. You may also be the blacksmith. You may also be the artisan. You may also be the polidor or the sharpener of the blade. Or it might be a different case. You may just be the designer or architect or researcher, and somebody else will do the materials gathering, and somebody else will do the blacksmithing, and somebody else will work on the scabbard and the hilt and will act as the artisan, and somebody else will be the polidor. So those are the roles and steps, roles and general steps in building a Bikol blade. All these roles are important. All these roles are important. Sometimes you're lucky if you can do all this. You can do all this. I forgot another role actually. The curator. That's a person who now appreciate the blades collector. He will be now the one to appreciate and curate the blades. You know, he will be the one to maintain. He will be the one to take care of the blade, so it actually lives for a long time. Or it will it will be in good hands for a long time. Because what a waste if you produce a really nice blade and work of art if you have no if nobody cares about it, if we have no collectors and curators or and private collectors or museum curators who will actually make sure that that particular work of art or that blade, which is a product of collaboration or could be a product of just one person's what one person's great effort, uh, could just go to waste or could just get lost or could just get destroyed or could just deteriorate in quality after a long time. So there, I forgot. Yeah, kudos to the collectors out there because you also have an important role in blade building. Yeah, collectors and of course the users. Use it well, use it legally, and use it with caution, with ethics. All right. Jason here for the Hagbayon Channel. This channel is devoted to current events, literature, rock music, martial arts, blades research, the outdoors, prepping and survivalism. Remember, the pen is mightier with a sword. It's December 2 here in the Philippines. Enjoy the cold weather. Thanks for watching.